Hey, I am back. Good to be back. Do want to switch gears. Do want to talk college basketball. And it's funny, right? I mean, I know I say every episode, yeah, we're talking portal today. And it's like, I wasn't even really intending to talk portal here on Monday's episode of the Air Tour Sports Podcast. But then on Saturday, something fascinating happened that I absolutely have to discuss. And that is that Emoni Bates, really one of the most highly touted high school players in the history of high school basketball, reclassified last summer, played at Memphis this year. Not yet eligible for the NBA draft because he just turned 18 years old. You have to be 19 to be eligible for the NBA draft. After 1 year at Memphis on Saturday, he announces that he is going to transfer. And you talk about a fascinating story about who this kid is, what the hype was about, what's next for him, and really the bigger picture things we can learn about this. This is about as interesting as it gets. And so because of it, let's talk about it. Emoni Bates, like I said, I don't think it's hyperbole to say he's one of the most highly coveted, not coveted, but highly touted high school players in the history of the sport of basketball. About 4 years ago, summer of 2018, 2019, something like that, he emerges after his freshman year, and you have real credible recruiting experts, basketball people saying that he is the best high school freshman that they've ever seen, that he is the best high school player since LeBron that they have seen. Some are comparing him to a young Kevin Durant as a guy that at the time was 6'8", 6'9", can hit deep threes, has a good shooting stroke, all that good stuff. And the hype just really starts to build as that this guy is the next future face of basketball. 2020 happens, the pandemic happens, he kind of disappears a little bit, ends up ultimately committing to Michigan State in what I think was basically nothing more than a chance for his dad to promote the prep school that he was opening. Commits to Michigan State, plays the season, whatever, a little bit, again, off the radar during that COVID year. And then it was really around this time last summer that he begins to play AAU basketball as a now player coming off of his junior year going into his senior year. And you start to realize, wait a second now, other players are catching up. That's not my opinion. I'm not criticizing him. It's just a fact. At a certain point last summer, Jalen Duren ultimately surpassed him as the number one high school player in the class of 2022. Then Jalen Duren announces that he is going to reclassify and play at Memphis this year. And then it was right at that time. I remember 2-3 episodes of the Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. We were talking about it on this show. Was that Jalen Duren reclassifies, and there's buzz that Emoni Bates is going to join him. And at the time, what was crazy about that was it didn't really make sense. And it didn't make sense because, again, remember, you have to be 19 years old in the calendar year of the NBA draft to be draft eligible. And so when a player reclassifies, in other words, when they skip a year of high school basketball, it is to get to college basketball faster, do their one-and-done season faster, so they can get to the NBA faster. And so when you start to hear the Emoni Bates buzz, I remember calling people, and it really didn't even make sense because you're sitting there saying, well, if he goes to college this year, he's still got to do another year because he was only 17 years old at this time last year. He just turned 18 in January of 2022, so he's not eligible until the 2023 NBA draft. So it was surprising when you started to see this Memphis buzz, and then bing, bang, boom, he ends up at Memphis in the fall. And it becomes this huge story, and it's a story that sadly didn't work out the way that anybody hoped. He got to Memphis. It was clear that he wasn't the player that he was touted to be. Some of it is on Penny Hardaway, I think, because Penny Hardaway tried to convince him that he could turn him into a point guard, and it just didn't work. By any tangible measurement, Emoni Bates was pretty good for a 17-year-old playing college basketball, but the hype about the KD this and the LeBron that, it wasn't even close. Guy averaged 7 points per game, 3 rebounds per game, 1 assist per game, over 2 turnovers per game, shot 38% from the field, 33% from three. And unfortunately for Emoni Bates, what became very clear was this. About the middle of the year, he goes down with a back injury. He leaves the team for a brief time to go meet with specialists in his home state of Michigan. And right when he decides to leave the program, he does come back and he is part of the program. But when he goes down with that injury, the program absolutely takes off. They go on their run. Memphis ends up in the NCAA tournament. And it was kind of crazy because I remember going into the NCAA tournament, I heard some kind of crazy stat that if you looked at the advanced metrics from the day Emoni Bates stopped playing until the NCAA tournament, Memphis was like one of the 2 or 3 best teams in college basketball. So they clearly played better without him. He clearly wasn't living up to the hype. He did come back briefly for the NCAA tournament before Memphis lost in round 2 to Gonzaga. And then from there, it just kind of came down to what was Emoni Bates going to do next, because, again, he was kind of stuck in a tough spot. Not eligible for the NBA draft, didn't really play that well at Memphis, and so we all kind of knew coming into this year he was probably going to be at Memphis for 1 year, and so on Saturday he officially enters the transfer portal, and now the fascinating part becomes what happens next. Now, in terms of what happens next, I think there's really 2 kind of spots here, right? One, he could just transfer to another college, and we'll get to the pro option in a minute, but in terms of the transfer to the other college, I don't think it's as cut and dry as everybody thinks. Now, look, this kid is 6'9". As a 17-year-old last year, he did average 10 points a game in college basketball. And so somebody is going to take a chance on him. Somebody is going to see the talent, realize what he is capable of doing, capable of maybe becoming, and somebody's going to take a chance on him. I don't know who it's going to be. We'll talk about schools in a minute. But I also think this idea that everybody's going to rush to the portal to grab him and everybody's going to be fighting over each other to get him, I simply don't think that's going to be true. And I hate to criticize a young kid. I hate to be too critical, but I do think that is the reality of the situation. I know he was only 17 years old, but we have some pretty conclusive data on who Emoni Bates is, at least as a college basketball player. He was a guy that when he was on the court did not shoot the ball well, did not create for others, negative assist to turnover ratio, 33% three-point shooting, and by the way, I'd add this. Not very big, not very strong, body's not very mature, couldn't hold up in college basketball, gets hurt, and he doesn't make anybody better. He's not a takeover player himself. And so the question becomes, who is going to take a chance on him, seeing that Memphis was a completely different team, really struggled with him, as opposed to when he was off the court. And that's, by the way, taking out the side stuff of the family and the parents and the this and the that, which we'll get into in a minute. But I don't know who's that interested. I mean, just think about these programs in college basketball, right? You know, I saw a list that came out on Sunday morning. I mean, let's just take some teams off the list. Kentucky is mentioned. They're the one-and-done school. Of course, they're going to want Emoni Bates, even though he's not a one-and-done. Well, if Kentucky gets back Oscar Tshiebwe, why does Kentucky want Emoni Bates? The one thing you don't want to do is take guys at this point that are going to take shots away from the biggest, most dominant player in college basketball. I saw North Carolina. It's kind of the same thing. Caleb Love is most effective when he has the ball in his hands. RJ Davis is most effective when he has the ball in his hands. So now you're going to add another guy that needs the ball in his hands? I saw him, he's going to be a Brady Manek. No, he's not going to be a Brady Manek replacement. He's not going to come in and shoot 47% or whatever from 3 playing off the ball. North Carolina doesn't make sense. If you're Arkansas, I saw Arkansas in the mix. Arkansas's got 3 McDonald's All-Americans that they got to take care of. They got 3 McDonald's All-Americans that you got to get. Anthony Black and Nick Smith are projected as one-and-dones. Nick Smith is projected as a top 5 pick. You don't need to be bringing in guys that are going to take shots away from those guys. And so it's not to say that there are no options. I just don't think that the options are as good as people think. Now, off the top of my head, without doing any phone calls or getting in touch with anybody, because, again, respectfully, it is Easter Sunday. Don't want to bother random assistant coaches to say, hey, would you recruit Emoni Bates? But you start to look around. I guess I could sort of see maybe Michigan with Juwan Howard in terms of the schools that might be interested. I could kind of see maybe Michigan. They were one of the schools that was interested early on. Juwan Howard, obviously, with his NBA background, not afraid to recruit elite talent. But even Michigan, they seem to back off during the first recruitment. They might have Caleb Houston coming back. I don't know if Michigan's a real factor. Texas was one of the first schools that really pursued Emoni Bates after he decommitted from Michigan State. Does Texas, they got 2 McDonald's All-Americans coming in their own right. Do they want to mess with what's going on with their players? Do they want to risk upsetting the 2 McDonald's All-Americans that they're bringing in that they got to get to the league in 1 year so that they can prove that they can produce NBA players? So you go on and on down. I don't know who that team is. Somebody is out there. I just don't know who it is. But what I would also say is when it comes to Emoni Bates, I do think that some of these professional opportunities I think should be appealing to him. It was funny because on Saturday when all this happened, I saw 2 good friends of mine, 2 guys that I really respect in this industry, Rob Dowster and Jeff Goodman, kind of going back and forth talking about this. And I agreed with my buddy Rob, who I've known for years. I do think one of these G League alternative routes is probably what is best for Emoni Bates at this point. Yes, he can go to another college, but guess what happens? if he's the same guy that he was at Memphis or just incrementally better, you know what that does? That immediately plummets his draft stock. He's on a stage every single week, 2 games a week, where we're watching him and we're picking apart his every move. So unless he goes above and beyond and is significantly better at the next stop than he was at Memphis, I think it's only going to continue to hurt his draft stock. Rob brought up the point of the G League option, again, because remember, he is not eligible to even enter the NBA draft at 18 years old. And I think Rob might be right on this. You know, I've made fun of the G League Ignite program and all that stuff, but when I do look at the G League Ignite situation, what I do see is this. At the end of the day, it's a developmental program. Yeah, it was supposed to be this alternative pathway. And at the end of the day, what it is it's supposed to be a place for players that don't want to play college basketball in the year between high school and the NBA, where you go and you focus strictly on basketball. There are no NCAA rules on how long you can practice. There are no classes to go to. There is no online this. You go and you focus on basketball 365 days until you're eligible for the NBA draft. I think that might be what's best for Emoni Bates right now. I don't think he needs to go to another college where he's going to be on TV 2-3 times a week. Everybody's going to be critiquing his every move. I think he's got to go somewhere where he's going to be off the radar and can actually work on the basketball stuff. I think he has to be coached by real coaches that have real NBA background, like Jason Hart, who right now runs that Ignite program, former USC assistant, who I think the world of. I think he's an incredible coach that's long overdue for either a college coaching job or an NBA opportunity if he's so inclined. But that's where Emoni Bates has to go. And oh, by the way, you can be off the radar a little bit. We can make fun of G League Ignite. Nobody really watches it, but it's okay. For Emoni Bates, that's what he needs right now. He doesn't need more spotlight. He doesn't need more critics. He doesn't need more social media hate. He needs to go somewhere that he's actually going to be better. And we'll find out in the coming days if Emoni Bates goes anywhere. At some point, I'll do some homework on Monday, maybe put together a list of schools that could potentially be interested. But I think he needs to seriously consider going the professional route and just getting away from the grid. By the way, do not go overseas. Do not go play in Australia or Europe. Just go to the developmental league, man. Just go to the developmental league or stay in college basketball. Go play for a Juwan Howard. Go play for somebody that's going to make you better. And I'm not saying that the pro leagues can't make you better. I'm just saying you don't need to be going and playing against 30-year-old grown men fighting for everything, whatever. You get the point. I would send him to the G League Ignite program. I would have him work with Jason Hart and that staff there, and I would have him get better and better as time goes on. Finally, what I would say about Emoni Bates, I want to wrap on one thing, and it's kind of serious. I do think he should be the last example of what we do to young high school basketball players. I think it is so unfair, and I think it is so inappropriate for people in my business to compare high school basketball players to the greatest players in the history of the NBA. And I hope that Emoni Bates is the last high school player that we ever compare to LeBron James or to Kevin Durant or to Kobe Bryant or to Shaq or to whoever. It is so unfair to a 14, 15-year-old kid. It is so unfair to their development, their growth, especially the world that we live in. And I really hope that Emoni Bates is the last one. And what I would say is this. Look, I get why it's done. I get that this is the world that we live in, especially in the media climate. I get called the hot take guy all the time, but here's the bottom line. I think most of my takes are pretty lukewarm. But I think we live in a world where every single person feels like they have to be the first one to say this about whatever, and they have to be the biggest, strongest, boldest, right? We do it in the NBA all the time. I talk about it all the time. Every 6 months, there's a new superstar that's going to be the next greatest player in the history of the NBA. It was Jason Tatum at some point. It was Zion at some point. It's Ja right now. It was Luka at some point. It was Donovan Mitchell at some point. I already see the buzz building for Anthony Edwards. Let these guys develop. Let them put together like a track record for a year or two before you anoint them something that they're not. But take it a step further with these high school players. Emoni Bates is 14 years old, and you're comparing him to Kevin Durant. That is ridiculous, and it doesn't even make sense. And, of course, I put that out on social media on Saturday, and I had somebody come back and be, that's what we do. Every high school player, every college player has a comp. Here's the problem. There's literally one Kevin Durant in the history of basketball. Kevin Durant is 7'1" and shoots like 48% from three and can hit any shot on any spot of the court at any time. Why are we comparing? You can't compare somebody to somebody that's one of one. There have been two players that look and play like LeBron James in 75 years of NBA basketball. Magic Johnson and LeBron James, that's it. We're probably not watching the third version of that at 14 years old. And so what I would say is, listen, I get a lot of stuff wrong on this show. That's why we do Where Aaron Was Right, Where Aaron Was Wrong. Because I whiff on a lot of stuff. You guys should make fun of me because I get a lot of stuff wrong, and I'm a freaking idiot. But for people who have listened to this show from day one, minute one, hour one, this is one topic I've been right on. 4 summers ago, I had people in my industry traveling around the country writing profile after profile after profile on this kid. I said, stop doing it. We do this too often. We do this too much. It is not fair to the kid, and it never works out well. I've been doing this a long time. I can go through all the guys that were supposed to be something that never turned into what we hyped them up to be. Andrew Wiggins was supposed to be the best player since LeBron. Andrew Wiggins is a really good NBA player. He's not LeBron. He was never going to be LeBron. Same high school class, Jabari Parker was supposed to be the best high school player since LeBron. And people say that's not true. There's a Sports Illustrated article with Jabari Parker on it. And they called him the best high school player since LeBron. You go back throughout history. I've used this example before. Lenny Cook, the number 1 player in the class of 2002, he's league ready at 15 years old. He never played in the league. There's a great book out. It's a sad, awful, depressing book about a kid named Demetrius Walker. 2002, 2005, somewhere in there. He's put on the cover of Sports Illustrated at 12, 13, 14 years old. The next LeBron, the next this. There is no next LeBron. LeBron is one of one. There have been 2 guys that look and play like him in the history of basketball over 75 years. There's one Kevin Durant. It's not fair to these kids. We have to stop. And Emoni Bates, I hate to say it because I feel like I'm criticizing him, but I'm not criticizing him. But you could see this coming. I remember talking about it at the time. Emoni Bates had never played the highest level of AAU basketball until last year. We're calling him the best player since LeBron. He's 6'9", playing against other 14-year-olds that are 5'8". He never played Team USA basketball. He never competed at the highest levels of anything. He never went to a prep school where he was playing the best high school players on a night-in, night-out basis, and it was so unfair to him. And now he's in a situation where at 18 years old, just finished his freshman year, he has to transfer because he feels like it's not getting done at Memphis, and now he's either going to go to another college, he's going to go to the G League, whatever. But we have to stop with this, and I hope Emoni Bates is the last one. I really do hope he does what is best for him, and I really hope it works out. I really hope a year from now, whether he goes to another college and finds that perfect fit, or whether he does go to G League Ignite or one of the professional options, that he figures it out. All that, but man, oh man, we have to stop doing this to our high school players. It's not fair to a 14, 15, 16-year-old kid, and I hope Emoni Bates is the last one that we do this with.